So now we have ghost hunters that come. We have people who are intrigued because we're on the ghost tour, the Nightmare on Elm Street, I think is what the tour is called. And this is being the last stop. And everyone has always been, intrigued about what happens to us once this life is over. So Miss Lydia and Philip are two of the most famous ones attached. Of course, there's a little boy that people see occasionally. People hear crying babies when there's no baby around. Guests at the end of the first floor occasionally will smell smoke, like something's burning. There's even been occasion where the whole building has shook at one time. One time it was because we had a minor earthquake. The other time we couldn't explain what was going on. So there's been numerous people. I would dare say that more people have probably had run-ins with Lydia than they have Philip. Philip is a ladies' man. He doesn't really have anything to do with the guys that are here. It's more the ladies. We actually have a guest who comes from Summerfield. She rents that particular room that contains the window that he jumped from. And she goes in on Friday and she comes out on Monday morning. She locks herself in. She has everything she needs on the inside. She takes no maid service, no calls or anything like that. And the reason that she does so is because she said she can literally feel the presence of a male getting in bed with her, being in the room. Conversations I don't know if she's actually had with Philip or not. Philip is the only one that I have had any sort of encounters with. When I was a housekeeper here, some 12 years ago, the front desk would leave the room doors open because housekeepers wasn't given a set of keys. So in most of the rooms, 99% of the rooms, there's a window directly in front of the door. So as you look in, you can see straight out the window. Well, in the particular room 332 that contains that window that he jumped from, as I was on the third floor, I was coming around the corner from the suite, and I just happened to catch that the door was open, so I knew automatically knew that the room was dirty, needed to be cleaned. But there was a gentleman standing in front. Well, he looks like he was just staring out the window. So with that knowledge of, well, there shouldn't be anybody in there, I back up to see, is there something I can help him with? Perhaps he needs help with his luggage or whatnot. And there's nobody there. So I come downstairs. I'm talking to the general manager. I'm like, hey, I thought you said 332 was checked out. I don't want to go interrupting somebody if they're still, using the room and whatnot. And he was like, no, everyone's checked out for the day. There's nobody left. He was like, as far as I know, me and you are the only two people besides the other housekeeper that are even in the building. And I'm like, well, who's the guy standing upstairs roaming the hallway? And the general manager at the time, he was like, Brian, really, there's nobody here. And I'm like, well, okay. So what he does is he goes to the bookshelf in the lobby and takes out a book that has pictures from when the building was opened in 1903. And it's a picture of the gentleman who worked here at the time. And he was like, well, what did he look like? I was like, tall, lanky fella. I was like, but now that you ask, he had on a long trench coat and a round top derby hat, which, later I didn't think about at the time, but I was like, well, that's odd. No one dresses that way anymore. So as the general manager that shows me the picture, I'm like, it's him. This is the guy who I saw standing in the window. And we've now discovered that actually was Philip Mullins in the picture. Now, who's standing in front of the window, I'm not sure. I will assume it's him. I haven't seen anybody else walking around in a trench coat and a derby hat. So in the picture, you can actually see he's the one who is not put together. His vest isn't buttoned, his collar's not straight, his tie is crooked, his hair is messy. So he's the one that stands out in the picture because he's disheveled. So the lady, then Carlene, who was a housekeeper shortly after I became general manager, we got walkie-talkies by this time because it's too far to walk up and down. So she calls down. She's like, hey, what did you want? I'm like, what do you mean, what did I want? She's like, well, you were up here. You were talking to me. I was cleaning the bathroom. I didn't hear what you said. What did you need? And I was like, Carlene, I haven't left the desk. What do you mean, what do I need? She's like, well, who was up here? Was there anybody? I was talking to someone. I was like, there's nobody here but us. Literally, nobody in the building but the two of us. And she's like, well, I've been carrying on a conversation with some man for the last 15 minutes, and I just assumed it was you. I was like, no, not me. And she just happened to be cleaning the bathroom in room 332. Lydia, on the other hand, Philip will come and go as he pleases. Female guests have been woken up in the middle of the night with that same brushing of the cheek feeling, or they describe someone tickling their feet. People report of hearing a pacing, a gentleman, or what they know to be a man, because from the footsteps, to be pacing the hallway that's covered in carpet and has been for years. So you can pace that hallway all you want to, but unless you're stomping or wearing lead-footed boots, you're not going to hear that sound, that clapping of. So what people have described is it's more of that popping noise. It's like someone's walking across the floor down here. I'm like, we never engage them to kind of help them explain what's going on, because some people get really weirded out. But we assume that that's Philip back pacing that hallway in the 20s and the 30s, when men's shoes were leather soled on hardwood floor. You get that pop snap from that heel to toe motion, which you're not going to hear now on a carpeted floor. Female guests hear a male's voice outside the door, so whispering something. And when open the door and there's nobody there, and of course they'll say something. There was someone hanging outside the door. They were, being loud in the hallway. You go upstairs, and there's nobody there. No evidence that anybody has ever been there. So he comes and goes as he pleases. Lydia, on the other hand, seems to be more. She has to be provoked by something. The story goes that she was pushed from the second floor down the steps. She didn't fall. When I think it was TAPS that came and did their investigation, the medium told the staff at the time that she was fascinated. Her favorite color was pink. She had been pushed from the landing over the banister and fell to the bottom by a man. And the reason that she's stuck in that one end of the hallway, and because there's never any reports of any activity of her past the elevator, and her room is just before that you get to the elevator, walking to the back from front to back. So the medium felt that she was trying to get to somebody, perhaps a lady friend or whatever the case may have been, that was in the room beyond the elevator, and whomever stopped her from getting there is the one who pushes her over the banister. So 5 men in my tenure here have been reportedly pushed in the staircase. There's only been one, to my knowledge, that's actually been able to make it all the way to the top. The other 4 have got about 3/4 of the way up, and the staircase and the ends of the hallways, the exit doors, are the only places that the hotel has cameras. So, of course, having to watch it for insurance purposes to make sure that, whatever the case may, technicals may have to be covered by it, is you see these gentlemen ascending the staircase, and all of them have been in some sort of state of inebriation. But from the video, not necessarily enough to where it would cause, because they're got their facilities about them, they're walking, you kind of get that sway back and forth. But when someone passes out from drinking too much, it's more of an equilibrium thing. Your legs leave you, right? This isn't the case. You can literally see the shoulder motion as if someone's standing in front of them and pushes them by their shoulders. They kind of push back before they fall. The one gentleman who actually was the one that almost made it to the top, he got to the very top of the landing and had the same situation. And there's about a dozen concrete or brick stairs covered in concrete from the top to the bottom. No one has ever been hurt falling down concrete covered brick stairs. And the gentleman who made it to the top made it all the way to the bottom with a 5th of Jack Daniels and never broke the bottle. So we assume she has the fascination. She may have been a drinker, not sure, but maybe he was just that guardian of that bottle. But there has been people who have left things in Miss Lydia's room. Reports of her smelling a perfume. It's like if you're walking around on the second floor, you get this sense that someone, this whiff of overtly strong floral perfume, kind of like what I describe as your grandma's perfume back when perfume was essential oils, and it's very noticeable, but it's not all over it's not all in the air. It's just as if there's just that whiff, as if someone walks by. Before we changed all the light bulbs to the LEDs in the hallways, then a incandescent bulb, the fixtures outside of what we refer to as Miss Lydia's rooms, or her room. That particular fixture, the maintenance the maintenance man was, even when I was the maintenance supervisor here, I was changing those light bulbs 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow.
So it seems like every time someone would upset Lydia, her thing to do to let you know was she'd pop a light bulb. Or the ceiling fan. There's a ceiling fan just outside of every single door on the second floor because the ceilings are so high. It keeps the air moving, of course. So this particular ceiling fan, the one that's by Miss Lydia's room, will literally turn so fast that you can hear the air move. It makes a whooshing noise. It will turn so quickly. So we affectionately just, so somebody's pissed off Miss Lydia, someone's been rude, because that's when things typically happen to happen if you have a male or a female who refer to her by a term she does not appreciate. We all refer to her just by her first name, never her occupation. The general manager, he's the only person I know that's come very, very close to actually being injured by her, or what we assume is her. Outside the staircase, which is enclosed now due to the fire codes that changed in the 70s when the building was turned into a hotel, just as you go through the door on the wall there used to hang a huge hunting print. It was probably 12 by 14 picture. It was kind of large. Huge frame, thick glass, had been hanging there for who knows how long. So Brian, he was the general manager before me. We call him Brian the First, since my name's Brian too. He was taking our tour group up the stairs, and he's describing the ghost stories and what Miss Lydia, possibly her occupation was, and evidently he refers to her in a very unflattering way. So as he steps up onto the landing at the second floor, said picture, which has been hanging there for quite some time, comes off the wall, the glass shatters, and as the glass hits the ground, it takes off the front of his shoe, just centimeters from his toe. And it's not that it cuts, it goes straight through the top of his. The only thing that kept it from going to the ground was the sole. When the water, she didn't like Brian at all. Of course, none of us did. He was a great guy, but he was a micromanager. Love him to death. He was a fabulous human being. But when the water system was changed, we went from the old boiler style to the Renai system, which was just more efficient. So someone has to be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even if the building is closed for whatever reason, which that was the first time it had been done probably in 70 or 80 years that the building had actually ever been closed. So he took a room on the first floor. So staff, housekeeping, maintenance, that sort of thing, we still have to come to work even though the building is closed, not receiving guests. We come in, he's got the elevator door standing open. He's got a chair holding the gate open, another stopper holding the wooden door open. He has barricaded himself into the room. He has locked the door, took the shutters down in case he had to escape through the window. And on the inside, he has a rubber mallet, an electric screwdriver, and a butcher knife and a hammer. And when we come in this morning, and they come back to the hotel this morning, we're like, "What are you doing in there with all that stuff?" He went on to tell us about the elevator, how he was just roaming around because he was here by himself and was pushed on the stairs, smelled Lydia's perfume. The elevator kept moving all on its own, but it never went anywhere. It's just that noise, and of course a brass gate slamming against a metal box. You work here long enough, it's a very distinct sound. Of that gear pulling up and down, but the elevator never moved. So that's why with electricity, the way that our elevator works, if the doors are open, the box don't move. So he props the doors open, the sound doesn't stop. And then he is harassed all night long by someone pecking on the door, on the room that he is in. So he is terrified by the time we get back here the next morning, which was actually kind of funny. I guess now thinking about it, not so much. But then it was really hilarious. The bouncing in the staircase. People report hearing seeing what sounds like a ball. It goes boom, 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 of course, down the steps. My favorite Lydia story is the couple, two small children, a girl and a boy, coming off the highway. Starts out like a horror movie. Coming off the highway, stormy, rainy night, come to downtown, need a hotel room because they don't want to travel no further. So the only thing left that particular night was Lydia's room. And so, not thinking much about it, the rooms were rented and they go upstairs. Well, I opened the next morning at 7. I came in to do breakfast the next morning at 7 o'clock. And here comes Mom down the stairs. And she is mad. I mean, she's hot. And so trying to calm her down and figure out why she's so upset, she is under the impression that one of the hotel staff has been making fun, is the terms that she uses, or harassing her little boy. So then we learned that her little boy has autism. He rarely ever speaks, and I guess due to his autism, he doesn't sleep in a full length of time. It's only 2 or 3 hours at a time. So he had woken up, and the rest of the family, I guess, is still asleep. He goes to the bathroom. His mom doesn't know when he gets up and goes to the bathroom, but when she finds him there at 6:30 the next morning, he's been there a while. And he's very inquisitive. I guess the support she brought up that he doesn't talk a lot. So she's asking all these questions, but the primary question that he wants to know is who the pretty redheaded lady is that he's been talking to for quite some time now. So at which point, I'm like, okay. So she thinks, she's like, a housekeeper's coming into the room, harassing my little boy. This isn't secure. What are you doing? And I'm like, ma'am, I'm the only person here. The night person who was here last night, I was like, his name is Tyrone. He's 6'2", African-American fella, not a pretty redheaded lady. I was like, and to be honest with you, ma'am, there's not even anyone that works here that has red hair. I was like, and the housekeepers don't come in until 10 o'clock in the morning. I was like, there's no employees here, no one with a key to a room except me as the general manager and you as the guest. So she wants an explanation. So, how awkward it is. Well, I'm, happy or sorry to tell you that your autistic little boy has been talking to a dead lady for the past who knows how long, because that's the only explanation I have. Guest report coming back to the room, and we always get the same thing. Will you please tell the housekeeper to turn the light off and turn the water off when they leave the bathroom? Okay. Every time it happens, every time someone leaves, if they have a long stay in that particular room, at some point they're going to come back, find the bathroom door closed, the light is on, and what they'll say is someone's in the shower. Well, would you mind just seeing who's in your shower? And they'll open the door. Well, there's nobody here. I can hear water running, but there's nobody here. Well, did you leave the light on? It's very possible that the housekeeper has left the light on and the bathroom door closed. Why? I have no idea. Not a common practice. Nothing that happens before. It's the only room it actually happens in. So maybe someone is just messing with the people who stay in that particular room. But Miss Lydia has a fan base. We have had people who have brought her clothes. We have people who have brought her makeup, jewelry, flowers. There was a really pretty sequined purse that the former general manager and one of the housekeepers, I think, gave her. When it's found, it's always found in a different place. We're not sure if a guest finds it and puts it back somewhere or if it just gets moved on its own. But we try to keep all the tokens that Miss Lydia has been given in her purse. So the tube of lipstick, nail polish, matching eyeshadows. We've even had one lady brought her a pair of pumps. Of course, you can't leave those in there. People are going to think that that's weird. Not that any of this doesn't sound weird already. Flowers. We've had a gentleman who carved pink roses out of wood and stained them and brought them to her in a vase, and we left them sitting in the room for the longest time until people started taking them, so then we took them out. And to the medium's credit, once the room got painted pink. The activity slowed down. It hasn't went away. I don't think it would ever go away. So between Philip, Lydia, the mysterious little boy in the elevator, whoever these guys are walking around in the basement, it's never a dull moment. Even it's because I tell the employees here all the time, I was like, even though you're by yourself, don't ever think that you're alone. That's, serves two purposes. But it really doesn't ever feel. And if you're here during the day, the hotel and the building itself has a very different feeling than it does once the sun goes down. I don't know if that can be contributed to the fact of the way that it looks or the preconceived notions that we all may have. But it does take on a very heavy, foreboding kind of atmosphere in the evening. It might be because the windows are so big and the lack of light is what does it. But there's never any natural light in the hallways or any places like that. But you can feel that darkness. So yeah, any of the housekeepers that's been here for any length of time, we pick on them and let them know, you clean the room, but Miss Lydia, she made a mess. Because if the room sits empty for more than a couple of days, it has to be double checked before someone goes into it. I kid you not, you will walk into the bathroom and it literally looks like a woman with long red hair has been standing in front of the mirror brushing her hair. Because there'll be a little crescent of red hair as if it had fallen down and rested on the floor. Just a crescent of red hair. I mean, it's not like a pile, a hair or two, but, to land in that particular shape. Or there'll be long red hair in the bathtub after the room has been cleaned and set for days. And still, nobody that's worked here has ever had red hair. Not while I've been here anyway. And guests that never happens. It only is if the room sits empty. The ladies from the Sue and B. Cohen Foundation, they have Pink in the Park every year. Mm-hmm. Their president and vice president will stay here when they have the festival, Pink in the Park. And of course, being breast cancer survivors like most women, they have the pink checkbook or the pink day planner or the pen or the calculator or something. The pink ribbon does, signify their survival from breast cancer. So what the lady does is she stays here every year. She has a chronicle of the pictures that she has taken. I don't know if she still hasn't posted on her Facebook page or not. But intentionally, now that she knows, she leaves her purse sitting at the end of the bed. And every single time she comes back, and she describes exactly the same thing. Like someone has walked by, tapped her purse, it's knocked over, the contents have spilled that are loose, but all the pink objects have been lined up perfectly along the edge of the bed. The first time it happened, she was like anybody else, it's one of the things that an employee or someone has been trifling through her bag. She's like, but whoever the thief is has OCD. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, they lined up all the little pink objects on the bed, even to the point that screwed apart a pin. The pieces were there. And she would take pictures of this every single time. Of course, after the first time, she finds it's funny. So they come here for that particular reason. Of course, people request to stay in one of those rooms almost daily in the hopes that something will happen. Of course, when you go looking for something like that, it never happens. It's when you're least expecting it, when you're not paying attention. But ghoststock.com, their footage that they did with Philip is actually on YouTube. It's Philip Moves in Orange at the Biltmore Greensboro Hotel. And what they did is they took the dresser in that particular room and covered the top of it in baby powder, put a flashlight in the center and set an orange in front of the light. And as the footage goes on, their medium is taunting Philip to prove his existence, to show that he's in the room. We don't believe you, and that sort of thing. You can see this orange takes a full rotation to the left to reveal the light from the flashlight. And as she keeps going and going and going, you see that orange take a full rotation back to where it was. The part that they don't show you in the video is when they turn the lights back on, and there's 8 fingerprints on the side of the dresser in the baby powder, as if someone had just walked up and was standing there at the part they don't show you cuts off before then. There was a group that got some EVP, some voice recognition, just answering simple questions about things that we knew about her. Where's your name, Lydia? Lydia or Linda is what we came up with, but who really knows? The ghost at the bridge here in Greensboro, the woman who met her with the lady in white in Jamestown, her name was Lydia. So in a small town, cross-pollination of ghost stories is inevitable. But it is kind of weird that 45% of the women in Greensboro had the same name. So yeah, and still today, there's no change. There's when the hotel's busy, things happen. When it sits quiet, nothing's going on. You don't hear a lot of anything going on upstairs. But to hear the front doorbell ring, to hear footsteps across the hardwood floor in the lobby, and then a man's voice to be like, hello, hello, and for you to come up the hallway, no one's standing there. You haven't heard the footsteps to leave or that bell, which we can hear. Yeah, you don't hear that leaving either. But you hear the coming, but you don't hear it the second time as if someone's has left. So whoever this guy is that keeps walking up to the desk needing service, I don't know if anyone's ever helped him yet or not. You can't find out who he is. Being pet friendly also produces its challenges. Because this thought that animals have that sense of noticing things as mere humans don't. Restless animals, people will either have one or two experiences with their pet. It's either they've been restless and nervous the entire time, or this is the calmest my dog has ever been, or my dog has never acted like this before. People don't travel a lot with cats, but given their personality, I wouldn't think they would care. It's the dogs. And people, the fascination that people have had, especially with Lydia, sometimes we jokingly here at the hotels like, gosh, I wish no one had ever brought this up. Because at points it does, because people react differently to it. If a guest gets put into one of the haunted rooms, as people say, and they don't want to be, they won't stay. I'm like, it's like a nursery rhyme or any other story. If you don't believe it, then it's not true. You give it the strength of you believing, and of course, every little noise you hear is going to be, some dead person rattling a chain in the hallway of an old building. But it does have a life of its own. And just to know and imagine how many people come and went from that front door, roamed the hallways, went in and out of the room, especially if it was a brothel. Right. There was all kinds of who knows had went on inside these walls. So if energy never dies, then unless someone tears it down, the building will live forever, I assume. But it's definitely an experience every day. There's a new story.
How often do you have paranormal crews in here?
At least once a year. Someone will call up and want to know and want to come by. They'll rent a block or rent the whole floor off at one time and go downstairs in the basement and do the investigations in the hallway. Some find things, some don't. Most of the time they don't. I think Philip and Lydia, I think they're tied together somehow. But the dates don't quite work out right. But just because Philip was dead doesn't mean that someone didn't finish what he was possibly was starting. There could have been all kinds of conspiracies going on if the ladies actually were, if it was a house of ill repute. Contraception in the 1920s, especially amongst those who are hiring ladies of the night, you're not going to be worried about that sort of thing. And you couldn't take a single female, pregnant, unwed, to the local hospital, So how many other women may have died in childbirth or stillborn or miscarriages or whatever the case had been if Miss Taylor actually had been doing what we suspect she was doing. But to find out about her was the most fascinating thing, because her husband was in his 70s when he passed away. So that would have put him, a soldier, in the Civil War, if not there toward the end. And for a 33-year-old woman to marry someone in their 70s at the time, not completely unheard of, but one would still say there's a motive there. Right. We still didn't figure out how she was able to inherit as much as she did, because the Cones didn't, I think we actually found the price of what she actually paid, and it was somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000, which now is not a great deal of money, but back in the 20s, that was a huge amount of money. You might as well say $1 million. So for a single unmarried woman to be able to have that kind of banking account and those sort of means would have been exceptional, especially not being married any longer and being a widow.
What about the little boy? You don't have any history on him?
The little boy, the medium that all the mediums have came, everyone that has come here, is the little boy isn't tied to the building. He just hangs out here for whatever reason it may be. We suspect is because there's probably a lot of children that were here. And anytime, if there's kids around, there's going to be more kids around. Given that this was what was considered Greensboro's red light district back at that time period, they would have been, street children, orphans, the children of those ladies that had actually made it all the way to birth. Everyone here calls him Timmy. I think that's just because it's probably just a generic name for a little boy. But he plays in the elevator. He's the one who plays in the elevator. Because if you walk by, we've had several people going, they'll just be standing there. And we're like, is the elevator not coming down? It's like, oh no, we're just waiting for him to get out. Who's him? Well, the little, they call him, everyone says the little man in the black suit, is what they say. But you can kind of just see the shadow of someone who couldn't be no taller than, 4'5", 4'10" at the most. But the room on the other end of the elevator is the same little boy we saw, and this sounds weird, I guess it sounds weirder than anything else I've said, walking through the wall. On one side of those apartments in the 1920s, up until 63, one side was the living room, one side was the bedroom, and then there was a pass-through going from one room to the other. And you can still see where those original pass-throughs were because the wall indents. And the lady comes down the next morning, and I don't know why I'm always at the desk when this happens. She asked me, she was like, so what's the ghost stories? And I'm like, oh Lord, here we go again. So she was like, no. She's like, this would be a little boy. She's like, and if I remember correctly, he's wearing a black suit. And I was like, what? This is brand new. What do you mean? She's like, well, the refrigerator in that particular room sits just beyond where that space would have been. So she gets up in the middle of the night, go to the refrigerator, get a bottle of water, as the story goes, as she says it. And as she turns around to go back, she hears a little chuckle. So she turns around and she sees the shadow of this little boy in a black suit walk into the other room. And I was like, oh, well, he must be the same one that plays in the elevator. Not sure if it's any sort of connection here. All the mediums, again, said that he doesn't have a connection to this building. He just hangs out here for whatever reason it may have been. But, maybe his mom was one of the ladies upstairs. Maybe his dad was one of the guys downstairs. You never know.
And how do you go about booking that room? I mean, do you leave that for last? No, it just gets booked like any other room does. People who ask for that particular room will do everything in our power to be able to put them there. Just because, just to prove nothing's going to happen unless you're rude. If you are rude to Lydia, she will make her presence known every single time, no fault. But yeah, we rent those rooms unless you ask. We don't tell. There's no reason to stir the pot no more than it's probably going to be anyway. But ladies who stay in that room of having nightmares of being pushed down the stairs, or a set of stairs. The one lady literally was shaken up a lot. She had woke up that morning and had a horrible nightmare that her best friend had stabbed her. Her best friend had gotten stabbed and she was pushed down a set of stairs. And she's like, I don't ever have nightmares. I don't seem to understand. So I was like, well, let me tell you a little story. So, the lady being pushed down the stairs. Married couples who will rent that room, engaging in activities of married couples, and her husband keeps hearing shh, shh, and he's asking his wife, why do you keep doing that? And I'm getting all this at breakfast the next morning. Like, I want to know this. She, so she's going back to him. That's not me. The TV cuts on. The TV cuts off. The phone will ring. So they come to have, a romantic evening in what they think to be, or what he is convinced is just another hotel room. She's a full believer. So I'm assuming they retire for the evening. He wakes up because he hears what he's described, like many others have, of high heel shoes on the hardwood floor. That is a sound that everyone recognizes, especially from being in school, a teacher wearing high heel shoes on the hardwood floor. So it's that popping noise. So, he wakes him up and says he's, blindly just wandering around and goes to has to go to the bathroom. Goes to the bathroom, classic, doors closed, lights on, and he can hear water running. So he tells me, he's like, I just assumed, the wife got up in the middle of the night and took a shower. He's like, so he leans back, looks around the corner, and finds wife is still in bed. He's standing there, and the water's running. So who's in the shower? The gentleman who did not believe that there was any such thing as ghosts is now standing there with an ultimatum, I'm assuming. Does he wake up his wife and tell her there's someone in the bathroom? Or is he going to be brave enough to open the door and see who's there? He wakes up his wife and will not let her go back to sleep. She was mad as a wet hen, they say, because he woke her up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or at 2:30 in the morning, which is always the time. Things always happen between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. So she's brave enough to open the bathroom door. It's like, see, there's nobody in here. Probably someone's taking the shower upstairs, And he was like, no, there was somebody in there. So neither one of them gets back to sleep. It was about 2 hours later, he finally drifts off and she was able to go back to sleep. But at that point, he kept her up because he was too afraid to go back to sleep. So, people react differently. Some people think it's fun. Some people are literally terrified by the idea. Some people refuse to stay if they find out that particular room may have some sort of...
Anybody mad at you afterwards? Like, why didn't you tell me?
Yes.
Or anything
Oh,
like
yeah.
that?
I've had a great many of people take a very ugly attitude. Well, you should tell people. So when you check into an old hotel, the last thing you want to hear is, now someone may or may not have jumped out the window of the room that you're fixing to occupy. So if you go back to your room and it seems like someone's been in the shower, it's nobody really. It was like, how do you, that's always my response. How do I explain that? Exactly. I'm sorry. And either that or people will walk in the front door and just look around and going, this place just looks like it's haunted. Well, there's stories. And unless guests dive into it, none of the staff will either, mostly because we're all kind of tired of telling the same story over and over again. There was another group that came and did an interview and took a lot of pictures. Of course, News 2 comes here every Halloween to the haunted hotel, which, was kind of a cliche almost. I've been threatening the owners to hold a seance, a Victorian seance in the lobby just to freak people out. The hoaxy things like they did during the Victorian era, communicating with the dead sort of thing, just to see if something actually would happen. And when nothing happened, I was like, we're going to finally put all this to rest. Either they don't want to talk to us or they're not here. But there's always something.